Alright, let's talk about Serena Williams, because right now there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of confusion, and honestly, a lot of emotion surrounding what people have been calling her divorce. And if you've seen the headlines, the clips, or the social media chatter, then you already know that many people immediately assume the worst. When people hear the word divorce attached to Serena Williams, their minds go straight to her marriage. They start thinking about heartbreak, separation, family struggles, and whether one of the most admired women in sports is secretly going through a painful personal crisis behind the scenes. That's exactly why this story has grabbed so much attention. Because Serena Williams is not just any celebrity, she's not just any athlete, she's Serena Williams, she's a global icon, a tennis legend, a champion whose name is recognized around the world. For decades, she has dominated the sport, inspired millions, broken records, redefined greatness, and carried herself with a level of strength and determination that few people in any field can match. She's built a legacy that goes far beyond tennis, and because of that, people care deeply about her, not just as a player, but as a person. That's why whenever something about her personal life starts trending, people pay attention immediately. And recently, that's exactly what happened. There's been a lot of speculation surrounding Serena Williams' marriage and family life. Fans and followers have been looking at her recent interviews, public appearances, and emotional reflections, and many have started wondering whether everything is really okay. Rumors began circulating online, with some people assuming that Serena might be going through a divorce from her husband, Alexis Ohanian. And once that rumor started spreading, it took on a life of its own. People became confused, people became concerned. And for many fans, people became genuinely heartbroken, because the idea of Serena Williams going through something painful in her personal life is difficult for a lot of people to process. She's someone who has given so much to the world through her excellence, her discipline, her vulnerability, and her power. So when people think she may be suffering privately, it hits differently. That emotional reaction is exactly what has made this story so big. The rumors have been swirling all over social media. People have been posting clips, screenshots, reactions, and theories. Some have been analyzing her facial expressions, others have been dissecting her body language, and some people have been looking at her tone in recent interviews, saying she seems quieter, more reflective, more subdued than usual. For many online, that was enough to trigger speculation. They started reading into every little detail. A pause in an interview became a sign of sadness. A thoughtful expression became a sign of hidden pain. A serious tone became a sign that something was wrong. And that's often how these stories grow online. It starts with a feeling. Then it becomes a theory, then it turns into a rumor, and before long, people are speaking about it like it's already confirmed. That's exactly what happened here. The media didn't exactly help either. Several outlets and commentary channels began fueling the speculation by running stories or discussions centered around Serena Williams' supposed marital troubles. They started asking questions like, are Serena and Alexis okay? Is there trouble in paradise? Is Serena hinting at a painful breakup? And even when these headlines were framed as questions, the emotional impact was the same. They planted doubt, they planted concern, and they encouraged people to assume the worst. A lot of that speculation seemed to be based more on hearsay, assumptions, and internet interpretation than on any confirmed facts. But in the world of celebrity news, that doesn't always stop a story from exploding. Once the public becomes emotionally invested, rumors can spread faster than the truth. And that's what made this whole situation feel so intense. Because people were not just curious, they were worried. They were looking at Serena's recent comments and wondering if she was trying to tell the world something without directly saying it. They were wondering if she was going through heartbreak. They were wondering if her marriage was in trouble. They were wondering if there was something painful happening behind the scenes that fans hadn't yet fully understood. But here's where the story takes a very different turn. Because what Serena Williams has actually been opening up about is not the kind of divorce many people assumed. She's not talking about a divorce from her husband. She's talking about a different kind of divorce entirely. She's talking about a divorce from tennis. And once you understand that, everything starts to make sense. What many people misread as marital heartbreak is actually something much more personal, much more layered, and in some ways, just as emotional, but in a completely different way. Serena has been reflecting on the process of stepping away from the sport that defined so much of her life. She has been opening up about what it feels like to separate from the game that made her a legend, the game that shaped her identity, the game that carried her through triumph, struggle, sacrifice, and history. That's the real divorce she's been talking about. And honestly, it is heartbreaking in its own way. Because for Serena Williams, tennis was never just a job. It was never just a profession. It was a calling. It was a part of who she was. For decades, tennis was her rhythm, her routine, her battlefield, her stage, and her language. It was the place where she poured out her passion, her discipline, her intensity, and her unmatched will to win. It was the place where she built her legacy, where she changed the sport forever, and where she inspired generations of people, especially young girls and women who saw themselves in her power and excellence. So when someone like Serena says she is separating from that, it's not a simple retirement announcement. It's emotional, it's personal, it's profound. It really does feel like a kind of divorce. And that's what she's been trying to explain. In her own words and in her own reflections, Serena Williams has been sharing what life after tennis has actually felt like for her. She's been honest about the emotional weight of it. She's been vulnerable about the challenges of letting go. She's been transparent about the internal struggle that comes with moving on from something that has been central to your identity for most of your life. That kind of honesty resonates. It hits people deeply because so many can relate to the feeling of having to release something they once loved, something that shaped them, something that once defined their purpose. Even if most people will never know what it's like to leave behind a legendary sports career, they understand what it feels like to go through a major life transition. And that's why Serena's words have touched so many people. She's not just talking about sports. She's talking about change. She's talking about identity. She's talking about grief. She's talking about evolution. She's talking about what happens when the world knows you for one thing, but life is asking you to become something else. That is a deeply human experience. And for someone like Serena Williams, who has spent so many years being seen as strong, dominant, unstoppable, and larger than life, seeing her speak from such a vulnerable place is incredibly powerful. It reminds people that even legends have emotional transitions. Even icons have moments of uncertainty. Even champions have to grieve the end of an era. That's the real story here. So while the internet has been obsessed with the possibility of a heartbreaking divorce in Serena's marriage, the truth appears to be something very different. The heartbreak she's been describing is not about the collapse of a relationship with Alexis Ohanian. It's about the emotional cost of walking away from tennis and trying to understand who she is on the other side of that decision. And that can be just as heavy in its own way, because leaving behind something that has defined you for years can feel like losing a piece of yourself. It can feel like mourning. It can feel like separation. It can feel like standing in unfamiliar territory and trying to figure out what comes next. That's what Serena seems to be navigating. And when fans saw her speaking with more softness, more reflection, and more visible emotion, some of them immediately interpreted that through the lens of relationship trouble. But in reality, what they may have been witnessing was something more complex, a woman processing one of the biggest transitions of her life. That's an important difference, because it changes the story completely. It takes the conversation away from rumor and brings it back to truth. And in Serena's case, the truth is actually more meaningful than the gossip. She has been sharing a journey of self-discovery. She has been talking about growth. She has been reflecting on what it means to evolve beyond the role the world assigned to her. She has been opening up about the emotional tension between holding on and letting go. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable when the world expects you to always be strong. It takes courage to admit that even a positive life transition can hurt. It takes courage to tell people that stepping into a new chapter doesn't always feel exciting at first. It can also feel painful, uncertain, and deeply emotional. That honesty is part of what makes Serena so admired. She doesn't just inspire people through her victories. She inspires them through her humanity. She inspires them through her willingness to be real. And in this moment, that realness matters. Because so many people were ready to assume the worst. They saw the headlines. They heard the word divorce. They noticed the emotional tone. And they filled in the blanks with fear. But what Serena Williams has actually been revealing is something much more nuanced and, in many ways, more relatable. She's been describing the pain of saying goodbye to a chapter of life that was deeply meaningful. She's been speaking about what it feels like to separate from the very thing that made her who the world believes she is. That's not scandal. That's transformation. That's not marital collapse. That's identity shift. That's not celebrity drama. That's a human being processing change. And honestly, that deserves more respect than gossip. Because when you really listen to what Serena has been saying, you realize this isn't about rumors, it's about resilience. It's about what happens after greatness. It's about what happens when the applause fades, the competition slows down, and the world still expects you to know exactly who you are next. That's not easy. In fact, for many high-performing people, that can be one of the hardest seasons of all. When your purpose has been attached to one thing for so long, stepping away from it can create a kind of emotional emptiness. You can feel proud and grateful and relieved and excited, and still feel sad at the same time. You can know it's the right decision and still grieve what you've lost. That's the emotional complexity Serena has been expressing. And it's beautiful that she's been willing to let people see that. Because it gives others permission to acknowledge their own transitions. It reminds people that growth is not always clean. It reminds people that endings can be painful even when they are necessary. It reminds people that walking into a new season often requires mourning the old one. That's what makes Serena's story so powerful right now. It's not the kind of story people expected. It's not the scandal some wanted. It's not the dramatic celebrity breakup narrative that social media tried to build. Instead, it's a story about letting go. It's a story about reinvention. It's a story about courage. And it's a story about what it means to evolve when the entire world has known you in one role for decades. That's why her reflections have resonated so deeply with fans. People are hearing not just a sports legend, but a woman navigating change in real time. They're hearing someone who is strong enough to admit that even success comes with sacrifice. They're hearing someone who is brave enough to say that even beautiful endings can still hurt. And that honesty is what makes her so compelling. So yes, if you're asking whether Serena Williams has been opening up about a divorce, the answer is yes, but not in the way many people thought. She's not confirming a split from Alexis Ohanian. She's not publicly unraveling a marriage. She's not dropping shocking revelations about relationship trouble. What she's been doing is opening up about a symbolic divorce from tennis, a painful but necessary separation from the sport that shaped her life and legacy. And that context matters, because without it, people misunderstand her emotions. Without it, they mistake vulnerability for scandal. Without it, they turn a deeply personal life transition into celebrity gossip. And Serena's story deserves better than that. It deserves to be understood for what it actually is: a powerful reflection on change, identity, grief, and growth. That's what makes it so moving. That's what makes it so real. And that's what makes it so inspiring. Because even though the rumors may have painted a picture of heartbreak in her marriage, the truth reveals a different kind of heartbreak, one that comes from releasing something you loved deeply and stepping into the unknown. That kind of heartbreak is real. But it's also the birthplace of transformation. And if there's anyone who has shown the world what transformation looks like, it's Serena Williams. She has reinvented the standards of excellence. She has redefined what power looks like. She has pushed past barriers, expectations, criticism, and history. And now, she's showing the world what it looks like to evolve again. That's why this moment matters. Not because of rumors. Not because of headlines. Not because people are desperate for drama. But because Serena is giving people something far more valuable than gossip. She's giving them truth. She's giving them vulnerability. She's giving them perspective. She's giving them a reminder that even the strongest people go through emotional transitions, and that those transitions do not make them weak. If anything, they reveal a different kind of strength. So when people ask, is Serena Williams' divorce as heartbreaking as everyone thinks, the honest answer is this: yes, it is heartbreaking, but not because her marriage is falling apart. It's heartbreaking because she's saying goodbye to the sport that made her a legend. It's heartbreaking because she's been honest about how hard that goodbye has been. It's heartbreaking because she's showing the world that even dreams fulfilled can be painful to release. And at the same time, it's incredibly inspiring, because she's not just grieving an ending, she's embracing a new beginning. She's not just losing a chapter, she's writing a new one. She's not just walking away from tennis, she's walking toward the next version of herself. And that takes incredible strength. So to recap, a lot of people online have been speculating that Serena Williams was opening up about a painful divorce from her husband, Alexis Ohanian. Social media, celebrity commentary, and media headlines all helped fuel that confusion, with fans analyzing her recent interviews, public appearances, and emotional tone. But the truth is far different. Serena Williams has actually been speaking about a different kind of divorce, a symbolic and emotional divorce from tennis itself. She's been reflecting on life after the sport, opening up about how difficult it has been to let go of such a major part of her identity, and sharing a deeply personal journey of transition, growth, and self-discovery. That's the real story. And honestly, it's even more powerful than the rumor, because it's not built on gossip. It's built on truth. It's built on vulnerability. And it's built on the kind of resilience that has always made Serena Williams so extraordinary. If you have any thoughts on Serena Williams' journey, definitely share them in the comments below. Do you think her openness about life after tennis makes this chapter even more inspiring? Do you think people misunderstood her words because they were too quick to assume celebrity drama? And do you think this kind of emotional honesty is exactly why Serena continues to resonate with so many people around the world? Let me know what you think. And if you want more updates, more celebrity insights, and more real conversations about the stories behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more. Thanks for the watching and subscribe.